Chapter 5. Scramble. A battle was coming. It was December 18th. Reveille sounded at 0600 throughout the barracks. It was quieter, and it was a pre-recorded bugle tune piped in through overhead speakers at a lower volume. I think they'd just grown accustomed to that. I yawned and sat up, staring at the wall and blinking. Last night had seemed like a dream. Promotion to captain, Pastor Rosie, deer meat and spaghetti, warm showers and soap, no Gorgons. Surreal had shifted to unreal, and now unreal had shifted to fantastical, again out of a dream. A dream of freedom that led into a dream of peace. I needed that dream last night. I started to get up and noticed a folded-up note had been slipped under my door. I went over to it and bent over to retrieve it, hearing my back creak in the process. Unfolding it, it read, "Captain Shipley, report to communications at 0730 hours for mission update with Colonel Keegan et al." I had no idea where communications was, but I figured I could at least grab a morning shower and wake myself up, then head out for a quick bite to eat on the way. When I was out of the shower, I peered outside through the blinds. The morning was breaking over the sky. Crews were already performing maintenance on a few of the jets on the runways. They still had masks on. I met Foxy in the hall. He'd been given a similar note and was just readying himself to come and meet me. Janine was probably still asleep. In any event, she was a private and would doubtless be doing other duties. We connected with an airman who had been with us in the hangar last night, First Lieutenant Asher Collins, and he drove us back to the command center in a jeep. On the short drive over, he informed us that we would want to don our masks. There'd been a group of Gorgons on radar nearby. A small group, but enough to show up on radar nonetheless. I wondered then if the jig was up. Had Graham figured out where we were and that Vance Cardona was still alive? Did she know we were onto her and now she was sweeping more Gorgons at us from somewhere high above us? I asked Collins to step on it. Just then, an air raid siren went off. Oh no. Soldiers looked up and began to scramble for the nearest building. Those who had arms immediately lifted them up and looked toward the skies, ducking for cover. Yet here we were in a jeep loudly buzzing across the runways toward the command center, and only halfway there. In the dim morning light, I could see sirens spinning red across the entire base. My heart pounded. I was weaponless, except for a new Sig Sauer P320 I had gotten last night. I don't know where my Beretta went. "Ash, you got any small arms in here at least? Anything?" "No, sir," he shouted. "Just the gas pedal, sir." We were screaming across the snow, skidding. The runways used to be heated, but that had failed at some point. It wasn't as if planes were launching or landing here often. And that's when I saw the tops of the buildings. Most of the DTF emitters were still up there. A chill ran down my spine. No one had lowered them. They're coming in under the radar again. "Oh man, we're in trouble," was all I could utter. "Collins, where's your radio?" He fumbled on his console and pulled out a CB while trying to maintain steering control, jostling us around. I grabbed the radio from him. We were nearing the hangar next to the one we were in the night before. "Command, come in, this is Captain Shipley. Secure all personnel immediately. They're not airborne, they're on the ground, over." I was yelling into the CB in my frenzy. "Come in, Command!" "Confirmed, over, get here quick." It was Miguel on the other end. "Negative," I replied. We were so much closer to the hangar. We'd never make it to the command center, and I wasn't going to take a chance without weapons. "Too far away. We'll have to take shelter in Hangar 2. "Confirmed. Be safe, Captain. We're on it." "Roger," I yelled, just as we reached the hangar door. There were 2 sentries posted up there with their rifles brandished, looking up at the sky. We skidded up to the door and threw ourselves into the hangar, which had already auto-closed, trapping 2 jets and a jeep inside. "They're coming in low, on the ground," I yelled, and the soldiers dropped their gazes. "Keep your eyes peeled. Get inside and barricade the door, quick," I shouted, turning back to him and then fleeing inward. We ran with all our might, looking back over our shoulders. "Hurry, there's a small armory this way," Collins yelled, and we sprinted after him. I looked to my left. An F-22 and an F-16 were parked in here, side by side. The F-16 was closest, and the F-22 was along the far wall. The soldiers behind us were sliding some heavy cabinets in front of the door, but it didn't matter. A terrible roar sounded just beyond the hangar door. I know that sound. I hate that sound. Oh no, oh no! Foxy, follow First Lieutenant Collins, quick! Foxy obeyed and retreated into the bowels of the hangar toward the armory with Asher. The door, the cabinet, and the two soldiers were propelled backward as a giant hulking shape pounded through, its ears bleeding, its form convulsing, willing to endure the constant barrage of the DTFs. Luckily, the nose of the jet was angled toward the massive hangar door. I didn't think it saw me as I threw myself underneath the jet and ambled up the cockpit ladder, landing safely into the cockpit. The thing thundered into the hangar, bellowing like a troll, floating there at the precipice just inside. "Turn around," I muttered at it, watching from just inside the safety of the cockpit, looking over the threshold of the jet's nose cone. "Turn around." And in the meantime, I was desperately scanning the cockpit for the canopy controls in order to close the canopy over myself. "Turn around. Turn around. Damn you." The beast hovered there, searching for a victim, twitching helplessly. Lord, they were awful. Berserkers that had been pumped full of chemicals and mutated even further. I remembered Vance's description back at Mammoth Cave. They were aberrations, grown and overstretched far beyond reasonable levels of tolerance, accursed and discarded out into the world, wholly vile. It looked this way and that, but it couldn't find a target. I kept absolutely still. "Turn around," I muttered again. And then the behemoth smelled its victim. So did a few more gorgons, which came whisking in. The behemoth turned to its right and slowly approached the fallen sentries. One of them was still alive, and realizing his peril, lurched for his rifle, grabbing it and squeezing off a few rounds. But the massive alien was not to be deterred. It was already pissed off, having to endure the proximity of DTF emitters. The signal was lessened at ground level since they were all pointing skyward. It was pissed off and hungry. It reached for the soldier, grabbed him with a large, spindly claw hand. It lifted the whole of his body into its mouth, crunching down hard. I looked away in disgust, but that was just the diversion I needed. I slowly pushed the heavy ladder away from the plane and reached quickly for the control lever to my left, closing the canopy over myself, latching it with the yellow handle. The canopy was only 3/4 inch of glass, but it was something and would shield me from sound. The smaller gorgons swirled around throughout the hangar, past my wing main plane and over the empennage of the plane behind me. I watched them swarm around inside the hangar. Thankfully, Collins and Foxy had closed the door to the corridor they disappeared into, and were doubtless now at the armory, hopefully gearing up. Something buzzed beneath my feet. I slowly looked around, eyes darting back and forth between myself and the gorgs swirling around inside. The hangar door was closed, but I guess there were many more outside, beyond the gigantic torn-up breach that the behemoth had made. And now there came two smaller berserkers with it, floating in and twitching spastically, circling around the behemoth and looking to fill their own bellies. There was that noise again. I slowly moved my eyes down and noticed a flight helmet on the cockpit floor. Someone was speaking through it. I hastened back up toward the corner of the hangar, and I slowly shifted my head as my arm imperceptibly reached down, turtle speed, grabbing for the helmet. I couldn't put it on and fit it over my existing mask. I would have to hold it close to me and listen. Gently laying it on my lap, I tried to listen. "This is Shipley. Go ahead," I whispered. I could hear it. Faintly, but I could hear it. I had to strain because she too was whispering. Thankfully, the ambient noise in the hangar wasn't the same as that of the skies above. "Captain Shipley, this is Lieutenant Miriam Keogh. I'm in the Raptor next to you, here in the hangar. How do you read?" "Terrified," I whispered, and I slowly moved my head to my right to look over. There she was, in her cockpit, sealed up nice and tight. A gorgon flew between us over my right wingtip. I could see her eyes following it, and was acutely aware of my heart thundering. "You reading me, soldier?" she asked sternly. "Loud and clear," I echoed. "Okay, here's what I want you to do. We're going to have command open the hangar door remotely and lure that thing to the middle. I'm betting it's going to wonder what's happening. That should put it right in your sight so you can zero him." "Yeah, but what about after that? There are a ton more of them out there." I caught the sound of muted gunfire outside, and a few of the gorgons whizzed out to investigate. Doesn't matter. Cardona tell you about our secret weapons? I searched back to our previous conversation, the one we had had before we rolled out from Washburn Hill. He was rattling off the aerial force we had up here. He had mentioned something about a new weapon. I think so, I whispered back. A trickle of sweat emerged inside my fogged-up mask. Yeah, well, I'm one of them, so listen up. You gotta pay attention. I wouldn't blame your buddies if they just stayed put in the armory and waited there to make a last stand, so it might just be you and me, and I need your help. I copy, I said, focused and ready to listen. Just then, the behemoth Gorgon whipped its head around in our direction. It must have heard something. I could see it over there, pausing and squinting and searching. We both held completely still. It must not have located what it wanted as it turned and proceeded back to its kill. I could see the blood from its ears trailing down its head and mixing with the blood of that sentry. The other one was being feasted on by a few of the other Gorgons inside. Thankfully, my jet's canopy masked most of the sordid commotion. All right, here goes. You're in an F-16 Viper and you're armed. You have a 20mm cannon with 500 rounds. You're loaded with 3 AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles and 3 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles. They're both air-to-air, and you have ECM and advanced targeting pods, and you're going to fire on that thing. Whatever all that meant. I just heard missiles as my eyes scanned for Gorgons. Here's what you're going to do. We're going for the AIM-9s since they're cold-blooded. Heat seekers won't help us here. As slowly as possible, when I give you the word, you're going to activate your HUD. That's your heads-up display. Got it? Yep, I got that one. Okay, I breathed, scanning my console. You're going to need to turn your master arm off, uncage your missile, and it'll be slave to the radar lock. Once that thing moves in front of you, all you need to do is squeeze the trigger. Make sense? Holy crap. She wants me to fire a missile at close range inside the hangar? Not guns, a missile. Do you read me, Captain? I'll walk you through it. Oh crap, hold still. I saw it. I was staring straight ahead at my console, and I could see it out of my peripheral. A Gorgon was right in front of my right intake, sliding up the side of the jet, and it was sniffing. I didn't move my eyes. My pulse quickened. If their vision is truly based on movement, as we've supposed, then please, God, don't let them see the arteries pounding in my neck. For a fleeting second, I realized I was praying to God and moving in trust. The Gorgon pressed itself up against my window and desperately tried to peer into the cockpit. I didn't breathe. It was 6 inches away from me. I was holding the helmet in my hands and couldn't reach for my P320. That would have been foolish to do anyway. It kept sniffing for me. Thankfully, Keo saw it too and ceased communication so it wouldn't hear us. I felt like a mannequin in there, except for the fear thundering through my arteries. I inadvertently swallowed. The Gorgon growled outside my window and started to hiss, but then it jerked its head to the right and peered over my nose cone back toward the entrance. Without a word, it sped away and out through the hole. So did the other drones. The behemoth Gorgon looked out through the breach, but paid it no mind, and the berserkers stayed with it. Maybe they felt that whatever it was, the drones could handle it, and they couldn't be bothered with it. The air escaped me in a slow, quiet huff, and I felt a thrill of fear wash down my neck and back. I breathed and tried to stay calm, but I was shaking. Okay, that was a close call. You okay, Cap? Keo asked me quietly. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's do this, I said, summoning up my courage. But don't those things drop when they're launched? The missiles? Yes, they'll drop from the wing. You should have enough clearance for it to drop and take off, though. It may skid and ricochet off the ground at first, but what better option do we have? What about guns? You'd have to steer your ship around to use those. A radar-based missile is going to take them out far more effectively. What do you plan to do, though, once we blow it? Leave that to me, she said, and then there was a moment of silence. Whatever it was she had in mind sounded like it was going to be epic. All right, here we go. As quietly as possible, look to your left. There's a switch to go from battery to main power. It says BATT next to it. Flip that forward and things will light up. Leave the jet fuel off for now. You flip that and that thing will come barreling toward you. I found the power switch and did as she said. All right, in front of you, there's a knob that says pull to cage. Push that in and free up the HSI. That's the horizontal situation indicator. You've probably seen it in video games. Like I've had the time to play video games. Okay, got it. Now, set your altimeter to elect, and then flip all 7 switches up in the avionics power bank section and set your mids LVT to on. Done. Okay, got it. What's next? I realized that I was panting. My eyes darted over to the behemoth again, chewing on the second soldier now. He would be done soon. On your left, turn the master knob to norm, and under threat warning aux, press system power. Done and done. Okay. I looked up. The Gorgon was taking its last chews. Right. In the CMDS panel, flip up the RWR and JMR switches. Then flip up the CH and FL switches. Turn it to manual. I know this is a lot. You're doing great. I'm doing great. I'm doing great, I told myself. The behemoth was swallowing and twitching. Okay, I think I got all of them. Next. Good. Now in the top center, you've got a bank of buttons with 4 sliding gray dials flanking them. The top left dial, take it and rotate it up. That's your HUD. Heads-up display. Okay, done. Below that, you're going to see an XMT button. Press that and turn it to L16. Got it. Okay, when RDY is flashing on the DD and a line is flashing on the HUD, set the INS switch to nav. Then turn on NWS. That's nose wheel steering near the top, and you're good to go. Now we just have to arm. I found all the switches and did as she said, though I must admit my head was spinning. Done and done. I slowly looked out to my left wingtip and noticed the yellow-tipped projectiles attached to the edge of my wing. There they were. In a minute, I was going to fire one of those at a behemoth Gorgon. Keo quickly walked me through how to turn off the master arm and then uncage and select my Sidewinder. I did everything step by step as she asked. My F-16 Viper technically was not on, nor were the engines running, so no air conditioning. It was so hot in here. Sweat was pounding out of my pores in tumultuous rivers down my back. My mask was getting more and more foggy. My HUD was up, and there was a large blip ahead and to my left. I've got it on radar, I thought. The 2 smaller behemoths were swallowed up in its radar signal, but they were still there, faintly. I guess they were no more than 70 feet ahead and to my left, in the corner of the hangar still. This was going to be a concussion blast, and it would be awful. I was to fire the missile by pulling the trigger on the stick, what she called the pickle button. One of the buttons on my stick would toggle between different payloads and sensors on the sensor targeting pod of the undercarriage. Okay, we're ready to go, Keo said. Take a deep breath, she said. This is it. I could then hear her talking to command. The behemoth rose up and turned around. So did the smaller berserkers. At that moment, several things happened. The hangar door began to rise. It was on noisy, rusty, squeaky chains after 16 years of reduced human maintenance, but it still worked. All of that heinous noise made the behemoth bring its hands to its ears and cry out in agony, bellowing toward the ceiling. It rushed over to investigate. The behemoths jerked and twitched. One of them screeched and shook its head violently and then fled out through the breach. At the same time, obscured by the horrendous din of the hangar door, Keo's jet powered up and began to reverse. Good luck, Captain, she said. Shoot straight. Say Eagle 2, Fox 2 on my mark. Eagle 2, Fox 2, I repeated to myself mentally. All of the other Gorgons were out except for the behemoth and one remaining berserker with it. They moved toward the door, looking wildly at it and wondering where the noise was coming from in order to smash into it in their fury. They were getting close, moving toward the center. As the morning light hunched in under the rising hangar door, I could see several dead soldiers out on the ground beyond the hangar, littering the runway. Another F-16 was sitting there dormant, abandoned and in flames, ass up, nose down in the grass off the taxiway. One of the buildings in the distance was burning in an inferno. My targets were in front of me. I selected my Sidewinder and was preparing to utter the command. Closer, closer. They were moving dead center. I had them. My heart thundered and my skin tingled in fear and anticipation. Eagle 2, Fox 2, I yelled and pulled back the firing trigger on my stick. I heard a few pops to my left as the missile detached and engaged thrust. Thankfully, it was only a few feet from the cement floor, because it did clang to the ground as it took off. A great whoosh sounded to my left, and I ducked down below the console as a jet trail whizzed out toward its targets, skidding across the floor and finally bouncing upward as it took off. It was clumsy, but it worked. The front of the hangar erupted into a massive fireball, and the Gorgons there were incinerated. My F-16 rocked and was thrown backward. I lurched and was pitched angularly, making a giant dimple in my seat. My spine clicked in protest, and I wondered if I slipped a disc or something. There was a terrific explosion that engulfed the hangar, and the flames licked over at us. There was smoke everywhere, but it was sucked out of the hangar as the flames took it. I straightened my mask and peered out over the nose cone. The behemoth and the berserker with it were cooked. Flaming chunks of them lay all around, and the hangar door was in fragments, but just enough to launch through, apparently. At that moment, the F-22 next to me took off, racing out of the hangar and screeching around to the right. Hot damn, it was one of the fastest jets ever made, and it hadn't even launched yet. I caught a quick glance of Lieutenant Keogh giving me a thumbs up as she raced out of there, her black visor down over her face and her Gorgon-deflecting mask strapped over all. I laughed. Of course, if you can't fit the pilot's helmet over your mask, put the mask over your pilot's helmet. Sometimes things were simpler. She raced out of there, through the flames, and took off down the runway. Her engines roared a deafening report, thundering into the sky. Gorgons had sped away from the exploding and roaring flames at the precipice of our hangar, but after a moment, Keogh was lost to sight. And then, suddenly, all of the Gorgons could be seen peeling past the hangar door, screaming after her. I grabbed my P-320, removed my mask, donned the jet helmet, and strapped my mask around it overall. Then I popped the hatch for the canopy and hopped out, sprinting toward the burning hangar door. I heard a noise behind me and whirled to meet Foxy and Collins, brandishing rifles. Thankfully, they still had their masks as well. The three of us cautiously peered out. All of the Gorgons had peeled off. This must have been a last sweep that had flown over us, I thought. Or was it something more sinister, showing more of their advanced intelligence? That intelligence was fiercely pursuing a tiny dot that was screaming into the sky, leading them up, up, up at nearly a straight vertical climb. Keogh's jet was a speck against the billowing gray canvas of the sky, which was overcast and threatening more snow. The Gorgons could all be seen as a dark wedge pursuing her. In a moment, they would overtake her. "Lieutenant Keogh, what are you doing?" I breathed. My helmet scratched. "Captain Shipley, it's been an honor. May I have the pleasure of introducing you to our secret weapon," she said. And then, just as the pursuing throng converged with the infinitesimal blip of her F-22 Raptor's silhouette screaming upwards at near Mach 2, they both disappeared into the cloudy canopy. "Good luck, Keogh," I breathed. After a few stark moments of disbelief, they were all gone. The sky lit up white as a static burst simultaneously came through my helmet. For a moment, there was no noise as the clouds fanned out in a circle from up where they had both punched through. The blast wave sounded deep and potent. We felt the gust even down here, standing there and looking up. Minuscule black dots plummeted from the sky, most of them burning as they fell, a raining shower of fiery destruction. The thunderous cacophony rolled over the land, and our hearts were moved at the sacrifice. Lieutenant Keogh had saved us. But what had she detonated? What was that payload she was carrying? Why would she sacrifice herself and thus alert Graham, far away, of something so powerful happening up here at our commandeered Air Force Base? Surely somewhere down in Nashville, nearly 350 miles away, an elderly woman in fatigues, sitting all alone weaving webs of deceit for power, would be informed of a terrible and unexpected explosion over Dayton, Ohio. And she would investigate. She would find that we are here. She would discover that Vance and Miguel and I were still alive. And she would bend her will, her forces, and her malice toward Dayton, Ohio. We didn't have much time. A battle was coming.